Stop laughing. So, in this video, we're going to be doing a lesson on bar chords. But before we do that, we're going to do another part of the lesson on left-hand technique before we get into that. So, I want you to kind of do what I do. So, do this like you're making a sock puppet or a shadow puppy, something like that. Alright, holding a sandwich. Now you're going to take it and bring it under your guitar and come over the fretboard as if you were actually playing. Good. So now why don't we move this shape down so that we're around the nut, so our fingers around the first fret. Good. So now I want you to take your thumb and straighten it out first. Alright, good. Now that your thumb is straight, make sure that you're making contact with this part of your thumb. You shouldn't be able to bend it because this is the point where you're actually making contact, the point where you bend your thumb. So, and you also want your thumb back, kind of behind the neck. It doesn't need to be super far, like right in the middle, but we don't want it hanging over like this. So good. That all looks good. Now the last thing I'm going to say is the other important thing about thumb positioning is where it is like laterally. So if your thumb's straight up, like you're doing a thumbs up, right in the middle of your hand, that can make certain things awkward to play, and it can also cause your wrist to kind of jut out like this, which is a bad thing. If you do the opposite and your thumb is completely parallel with the neck, then sometimes you palm the back of the fretboard and do this, and that also causes problems with your wrist. So any sort of extreme thing with your wrist is going to cause pain, and so we want to have a thumb position that's going to support everything rather than make it go out of whack. And thumb position determines like everything with our fretting hand. So any problem that happens with our wrist usually stems from our thumb. So it's really important that we try to follow these steps. So once again, thumb is straight, making contact with the fretboard right here at this joint. And now last, we want to have a sort of diagonal angle pointing towards the headstock. Usually the rule that I give is if your index finger is like hanging around a certain fret, like in this case the first fret, it should either be around that fret or a fret behind, somewhere in that area. So since the first fret is pretty large, it's fine if your thumb hangs out around the first fret like this. So good, that looks good. The only other thing I'm going to say is try to get all of your knuckles, your whole palm, away from the guitar a little bit more. Okay. Yeah, that looks better, but now bring your hands onto the guitar. Good, yeah. And you see how you're making that like arch? Yeah. And you said that you used to play violin, so you probably had like a similar thing that they would talk about when they played violin, even though that was like, you know, 10 years ago. Yeah. But yeah, so, and you've experienced this before, you want to have an arch in your fingers so that you don't rub against adjacent strings and stop them from vibrating. So this is a really good kind of technique to have. So just make sure the thumb is straight, that you're making contact at this part of the thumb, and that your thumb is sort of at a diagonal angle going back from the headstock like this. Good. And also, just in general, make sure that your wrist is relaxed and not doing anything super funky. Good. So let's start talking about bar chords. So before we get into the actual chord aspect, I'm just going to talk about what the bar is. So the bar is kind of like using our finger as a capos. You've heard of capos before, you've seen capos before. Yeah. So capos are basically this thing that you put on a fret that frets all of the strings on one fret like that, and allows us to play open chord shapes that we already know in a different key by doing that. So bar chords kind of do a similar thing. So bar chords is taking your index finger, bringing it over the guitar as if you were in a regular playing position, and doing that, being able to bar at one fret and get every string to resonate. So we're going to try to do this at the 7th fret, so you can line up your index finger with the 7th fret, and then try to make sure your thumb technique looks good. Good, so the 7th fret's going to be one below, so actually at the dot. Oh, okay. Yep, there we go. Good. So this is going to be one of the places on the guitar with the least amount of resistance, which is why we want to start it here. It's a lot harder if you start it at the 1st fret, or vice versa. So, great. So in the beginning, some of the things I'm going to say is that a lot of the problems that people have with bar chords just stem with them not thinking about it the right way. So they think that basically what they try to do is like fret whatever note their index finger is the lowest on. So for example, some people would try to fret the 7th fret of the low E string and then just drop everything, and that can cause some problems actually. So you don't need to have your index finger end at the 6th string. It can go over, and most people usually do have it go over or actually come back a little bit. The reason for that is usually the problem that causes, or the area that causes problems with bar chords is this joint right here in the kind of middle knuckle. And a lot of time that tends to hang out over the G string, which is a really important string when we play bar chords, and sometimes you lose it when we're trying to fret bar chords. So a common solution is bringing your index finger over a little bit more so that that part of your finger isn't resting over top of a string and stopping it from playing. The other really common solution is twisting your index finger back a little bit. So if instead of going like this and having your index finger be completely flat, we actually just twist it back slightly like that. And so doing that combined, turning your index finger back a little bit and then bringing it up actually over the fretboard, makes it a lot easier to get the full bar out. So why don't you try it? Try it like that, where you pick every string individually.
I'm struggling.
No, just keep trying. Just go through. So if you
Okay.
miss a string, just keep going.
Okay.
Good. So the only one that we were kind of losing there was the D string. So that's pretty good. And you'll see that a lot of the shapes that we do, you're actually going to have a note fretted on the D string with another finger, so that's not necessarily that important, even though you do want to be able to like fundamentally get the bar out. So good. Let's try it again one more time. Picking each string individually. Good. Pretty good. All right. I'm going to check and see what time we're at. Good.
Okay.
So, let's try it one more time, but this time we're going to strum it as a chord.
Okay.
Just make sure that you try to hit all 6 strings. Good. Alright, now I'm going to teach you a little technique to help you practice bar chords. So in the beginning it can be hard to do bar chords for an extended period of time, or just to do bars for an extended period of time. It takes a while to kind of develop like the callus on your finger. So if you can even see like how my finger looks, it looks like really kind of like nasty, right? Yeah, that's from like doing bar chords all the time. So yeah, it can take a while to kind of develop that, and in the beginning you can have like just like pain in your finger, and you know it's kind of like hard to do. So here's a little like exercise that we do that kind of makes it a little bit easier. So you're basically going to be going like this. So you're taking the bar, playing it twice, and walking it down each fret, starting at the 7th fret. But the important thing is that you're only fretting it when you strum. So we're not going like this, where we just hold it down the entire time. Because that's not really helping us at all. That's still having the pressure down the entire time. But in here, our hand is resting over, and it's in the position, but it's only dropping and fretting the note when we're strumming. So why don't you try it?
Okay. Oh, I did it wrong.
And then just keep going. Good. So one thing that I'm going to suggest is it seems like your hand is starting to go this way, where it's almost going like diagonally, and your knuckle is bringing the end of your finger towards the end of the opposite fret. So I think the straighter you have the bar and the closer to the fret that you're playing, the easier it's going to be. So for example, if I was playing at the 7th fret, I would want to be almost on top of the 7th fret right there and have my finger try to be straighter. I think that's going to make it a lot easier rather than trying to kind of do this. You're going to start to lose a little bit more in some of the higher strings. So why don't you try it one more time?
Okay.
Good. So how does your hand feel? How does your like wrist and your fingers feel?
My wrist kind of feels weird.
It feels weird? Is it
Yeah.
like a painful weird?
I don't know. I think it's just like in a weird position.
Okay, yeah. I do see that your wrist is a little bit kind of like far out. So one of the things we're going to do to try to bring that in a little bit more is the whole thing I was talking about with the thumb, where we, instead of having the thumb, your thumb is pretty perpendicular to the neck right now. Try to bring it back a little bit more this time that you do it. So not like this, where it's all the way through, but just kind of like this, just a little bit back behind the first finger.
Okay.
All right, good. Let's try it one more time, and then we're going to move on to some other stuff.
Okay.
And the other thing I'll say is, remember the thing where you bring your hand over. So if you see, when I'm bringing my hand over, I'm not going like this to bring my hand over. I'm just bringing like my whole kind of, my whole kind of arm up. So my palm is a little bit closer to the fretboard than it would normally be. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, like this?
Yeah, and the twisting aspect of it is also very helpful for getting all of the notes out. Yeah, that's very, very helpful. Yeah, and that's another common thing that people do. You can't do that with every bar chord shape because some of them you're going to be using your middle fingers, but some of them you aren't. Some of them you actually do have your middle finger free. So I wouldn't necessarily try to do that all the time just because it can be a crutch and one that you're not going to have available for you. But you can try it out and see if you like, if it helps in the beginning. All right, cool. Try it again. Good. So yeah, it's like hard, right? It's like a whole new thing. All right, great. So now we're going to talk about actually like forming the first like bar chord shape. So what this bar chord shape is going to be is a major bar chord with the root of the chord on the low E string. And so it's actually going to come from the shape of an E major chord. So can you play an E major chord for me? Close. That's an E minor chord.
Oh, okay.
So one thing we're going to do to switch it is, so right now you're playing the B and E notes with your index finger and your middle finger. So switch it so that it's your middle and ring finger first. That's going to be the first step. So play that same E minor chord that you did, but instead of using this set of fingers, use your middle and ring to do the fretting.
Like this?
Exactly.
Oh.
Yep, there we go.
Like,
Just make sure that your ring finger is on the second string. I mean the second fret.
Oh, like this?
Yeah, but make sure they're just both on the same fret, like how they normally are when you play the chord. So right now your ring finger is on the third fret,
like
so just make sure they're both within the second fret. Yeah, like that. So just try that first. Good. So now what you're going to do is you're going to add in your index finger at the first fret of the G string.
Right here?
So the G string is the third string up. So you're just going to have
Right
string, string, string. Yeah, just like that. So try that again. Good. And so now if you lift your finger off and do it again, your index finger, yeah, it instantly goes from major to minor. I like this because it's like fun when you teach it to students because it's like, wow, with one finger I can change everything from like happy to like soul-sucking depression. And all it takes is like one finger. Good. So this is the shape which the bar chord is going to come from. But remember how I just had you try to play this E minor chord but use a different string set or a different finger set? So now we're going to do the same thing but for the whole E major chord. So we're going to play the same chord, the same 3 fretted notes. Sorry, I just like spit a little bit.
No, you're good. I didn't feel it. You didn't have to say
Okay. Well, yeah, no, I just pointed it out. So we're going to take, we're going to play these same 3 fretted notes, but we're going to take our index finger out of the equation. So we're going to do it like this. Ring finger, pinky, middle, like that.
that. Like the same chord.
Yeah, the same, exact same chord, exact same fretted notes, just using different fingers for it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So like that.
Yep. Good, and make sure you're starting at the low E string, so it's an E chord. Good. Let me check the time and see where we're at. Great. So, now what I want you to do is bring your index finger down behind the nut, as if you're barring an imaginary fret back there.
Okay.
Like that. Good. So, this is actually what the bar chord is. All the bar chord is taking this shape up and then just using your index finger as the bar. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this shape and move our ring and pinky finger all the way up to the 9th fret.
Okay.
So it's going to be 2 above that last single dot. Yep, right there. And then we're going to bar the 7th fret with our index finger.
Okay.
Yep. All right, how does that feel?
I think I need to do the same thing with my thumb. Right.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. The only thing I'm going to say is with your middle finger, right now this joint was clasped. It was collapsed like this, and we want to try to get that joint up like this, so all of our joints are like kind of extended. Okay. Good, yeah, and so with your index finger, try to do the bar again. It looks very good in the beginning where you were bringing it over. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And try the twisting to the side as well. And it's almost just like a little pivot like this.
Okay.
Great. All right, let's see if we can try. Oh, so right now you actually lifted your finger entirely off the fretboard, so yeah, it's got to be completely fretting in. So just make sure it's making complete contact with it.
I feel like I'm like muting chords with my hand though, like.
It doesn't look like it. If you would bring the middle finger joint up, so your ring and pinky fingers are low. They're pretty close to the strings, but it doesn't look like they're actually making contact with them. So
Okay.
I think everything is fine. Yeah, and don't be afraid to what you're doing right now. Bring that index finger really over. That's completely normal. My index finger is like all the way here
Okay.
when I play bar chords. That's
Okay.
completely normal.
Okay.
All right, great. Try it again.
Yeah, I think
So
just, like,
what
the
I
rest
think
of
that
my-
you're doing is you're trying to get this middle finger to not be collapsed by lifting your hand up. So if you miss a note, don't worry about it. Stick with what you're doing, but just finish the chord, and then we'll just try to fix the technique for the next
Okay.
time. So don't try to change anything over the course of your strumming. Like set your hand, and then just with your right hand pick everything out.
Is it like this?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So let's try to.
Oh, I think I keep like lifting this one up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what's happening is by the time we get to the lower string, your index finger is actually like this. So you just got to make sure that your index finger still needs to fret every day. You still need to be doing this
Yeah.
with the bar. Good. Let's try it again. Good. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Why don't we just try playing it as a chord? We're gonna do the same thing we actually did before, where we just do this. And you don't need to change positions. You can just leave it here at the 7th fret for now. But let's just try this.
Okay. Oh, I think I'm really losing this.
No.
Okay.
It's just
Okay.
it's a hard concept. It's not
Yeah.
gonna come immediately. It takes time.
I feel like my hands are too fat for this.
No, believe me, they're not. Good. Yeah, it's starting to come out more.
Yeah.
Make sure right now with your right hand, you're actually not playing every string. You're just going like this. So first off, you have to be hitting, following all the way
Okay.
through. So make sure with your right hand you're following through.
How do you do this, Michael? My hands hurt.
Oh, really? So talk about the pain that you're having in
No,
your
it's just
hand.
like my fingers.
Oh, your fingertips?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good kind of pain. That just means that you're developing the callus.
Yeah.
Bad kind of pain is like wrist pain.
Mhm.
That's usually or like pain like around here sometimes can be like a bad thing. If it's like fingertip pain or like a soreness, like you're doing a workout, that's like a good kind of pain. But like wrist pain, that's like
Yeah.
it's like a big
Yeah, my wrist
no-no.
too.
But yeah, it takes a while to get used to it. That's one of the reasons why doing the whole like bouncing thing
Mhm.
is a little bit better. So good. Let's try it a couple more times. I'm gonna check the time while you're doing that.
All right.
So one last thing I'm going to explain with the bar chord is so the most important note that we need to get out of this actually is the G string.
Okay.
Because just like the difference between E major and E minor, which is that one finger, so the minor bar chord starting on the low E string, we just take our middle finger out of it. And that's why I was
Okay.
explaining this thing where you can do
Yeah.
that, because you can do that with the minor bar chord change. So it's really important that we get the G string out, because if the G string is muted, then it's not a major chord or a minor chord. It's just like a really fat power chord. So that's kind of the most important string that we need to get out. So if you can hear this, then you've got the like kind of most important part of it. So I would really focus on your middle finger, trying to get that note out. So let's try it again, just picking it individually.
And we're doing it.
Yep, and yeah, we'll do the major. We'll still stick with the major one for
Okay.
now, and then we'll try the minor one. Yep. Why don't you try like this, where you
Oh, okay.
pick them one by one? And so just focus on right now your middle finger joint is
Okay.
clasped. And you're also, with your ring finger and pinky finger, they're very flat. So just try to bring them up a little bit more. Yeah, exactly, with the arch. Good, yeah, and your wrist looks pretty good right now. I think that'll help out a lot. Yeah, now your index finger is like hanging way over. That looks really good.
Okay.
Good, yeah, it's coming along a little bit better. I would just focus on bringing your hand up so that you can get on top of everything. Rather than jutting your wrist out to try to get on top of everything, just bring your hand up more and bring everything kind of over. And just really focusing on having this middle finger instead of like this, having it like that, where everything is coming up.
Okay. It also doesn't help that I have like nails right now.
Oh, you do?
Like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit right here. Like
Oh, yeah, that's not too bad, but yeah, nails will